crazy stuff. I've taught around for 15 years, and for the last couple of years, this program, to change the way we teach mathematics to the kids. The kids we teach today, I call them.
Dr. Milou, it's not picking up over here. Either if you could speak louder or use the microphone, it would be great.
So the kids that we teach now, I call the I generation. If you think about these kids, they've never known a world without a cell phone. They've never.
I have no clue. This is brand new. I've used this one for years. Never heard of it.
They have never known the world without the internet. And the genesis behind this program is that these kids have grown up with the internet all their lives. They've grown up with cell phones all their lives. And yet everything we do in school is so different from them. So we wrote the first ever program that was 100% digital, 100% online. And I'll tell you, we had many, many long meetings over the course of the past 3 years. Because I wanted the program to have no paper whatsoever. And I lost that argument because there is paper, there is a journal, and I hate it. I don't think it's a good journal. But there is paper, and the journal has 2 pages every single day where the kids will work on. And some districts, I just came from Oklahoma City, last week I was in Ohio, I'm going to expand the journal to 4 pages. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the idea is, again, that these kids don't go home. The kids you teach today. I have a 5th grader just graduated 5th grade. I have a 4th grader, and I have a 3-year-old that I hope. But my kids don't go home, man, to play football outside. They go home and put their Xbox headphones on, right? You know, the Xbox headphones? And they play online football against 17 other kids, 16 of them that they don't know. So we want to bring a program that they can play and do. And boy, why were they doing the Xbox? Why were they on Facebook? We want to run a program for the kids. And it is the first ever digital program on the market. It's 100% digital and online. It is based on the Common Core. This is not a program that has been out for 10 years that was revised to the Common Core. It was only written to the Common Core. It's 100% Common Core. There's no extra lessons. There's no material that's not aligned with the Common Core. It's only Common Core material, which does beg the question. In New Jersey next year, we technically have not adopted Common Core in middle grade. We have adopted Common Core in K-2 last year, year that just ended. And next year, it is grades 3, 4, and 5 in New Jersey. For grades 6, 7, and 8 in New Jersey aren't officially Common Core in 2013-2014. What that really is important to you is that next year, 2012-2013, New Jersey adds in grades 6, 7, and 8. It's still based on New Jersey standards. So how are you going to deal with that if you're teaching 100% Common Core book? And there's some things we do have to talk about there. How we make sure we still cover New Jersey standards even though we're teaching a Common Core book. 100% digital, but all you need in the classroom is one projector. And I believe, as Margie told me, everybody has a projector and everybody has a smartboard. So you're ahead of the game there. Ultimately, though, there are going to be times when you're going to have to be in a computer lab, and there are going to be times when the kids need more instruction or intervention or remediation. And that should be one-on-one with the computer. One of the kids, one-on-one with the computer, intervention and remediation. I don't know how you deal with that in the district. Maybe I should ask Margie before telling my class.
Tell me exactly what?
How intervention is being dealt with. Are students getting a second math class, a pull-out class, a resource class, or is it all pulled in? So the question becomes then, if a kid has severe remediation or has several lessons assigned to them that we call intervention lessons, how are they going through those intervention lessons? It has to be a district discussion. And I'll show you what I mean by intervention lessons as we go through the presentation. But but kids get assigned specific lessons to their needs. And then how are they completing those lessons? We wrote this book in the hope that districts would give all kids a math class and give kids that need a second math class. Why? Because kids who need extra remediation, kids who have extra needs, need more time on math. So they would need a second math class to complete their intervention lessons. Those who have a long list of intervention lessons. I don't know if Margie heard that.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't want the camera anymore.
A second period.
I heard that. I'm thinking as you're talking, gee, I wish you told me that earlier. Okay.
There's a Common Core right now, by the way. Common Core is now adopted in 46 states. It says 47 up there because they're counting DC as a state. If you hate the Common Core, you can move to a couple places. If you hate the Common Core, you can move to Texas. They're not adopting the Common Core. Never been to Texas, no, it's not part of the United States. It's not. Texas is better than all of us. They're the greatest thing in the world. They're not. Nebraska is not adopting the Common Core. You can move there. They're very, very local control. Nice state, but everything does at the local level. I think New Jersey's bad. Go to Nebraska.
Dr. Morello, I forgot to remind you, and I know you knew at one time, that we have a little bit more time than the 40 minutes a day for downtown or middle school. We have 80, 40, 80, 40. They have a double period every other day.
That's a good interesting point. So one of those 80s should probably be dedicated to some intervention.
How much time does this program require, would you say?
Well, I would say we wrote the program that each day would take 45 to 55 minutes.
Okay.
But there's enough material, people tell me, to fill the whole 80. But nevertheless, there seems to be some time built into some of those 80 days that the second teacher in the classroom can be working on kids' homework intervention lessons.
Our teacher with us, teachers. You have students that are in class for you.
But that would be one-on-one with the computer, because each kid would have different intervention lessons assigned. We'll go through that.
We have a couple of laptops. Does everybody still have, how many laptops? 3 laptops in their classrooms, that's all.
The laptop cards.
Well, they broke them up so each teacher would have it. And then we have the labs.
By the way, you can move to Virginia. We're not adopting the Common Core. Virginia state test is called the SOL. We're not adopting it. It's called Standards of Learning. That's what we're thinking. Minnesota is not adopting math. They are adopting language arts. And Alaska is not adopting either. Here you can see Rutgers. So if you don't like the Common Core, you can move to Virginia, Texas, Nebraska, Alaska, or Minnesota. Everywhere else in this country is adopting the Common Core, and they must adopt by 2014, 2015. So again, let's look at the next 3 years here. Next year, 2012, 2013, New Jersey stays in effect, and it still stays in effect in New Jersey standards. 2013, 2014, you're teaching Common Core, and you're teaching a New Jersey ask, you're given a New Jersey ask that is aligned to the Common Core. In 2014, 2015, you and 46 other states will all be given a national assessment, and New Jersey asked to adopt. What's important to know about the national assessment is most of it will be given online. Your kids are going to already be used to that because you're going to be doing homework, you're going to be doing testing, you're going to be doing things online in the Visions program. But the whole country will move to online assessment by 2014, 2015. Any question about that timeline in the next 3 years? And your assessment. The assessments in digits or the assessments on the national tests?
State
There's rumors that the assessments will be every quarter.
You're talking about the state assessments, right, Eileen?
I guess.
Yes, part of the state assessments.
So a national assessment will be given, there'll be 2 parts of it that will count. 2 parts of it will count at the end of the year. There will be an online part, and there will be a performance part. The performance part will not be online. The test will be made up of 2 parts that will both count about 50-50. So about 50% performance about 50% online, not all multiple choice online. But those two will be given on 2 different days at the end of the year. There will be 2 other optional parts of the test that will be optional. One will be given in September or October, and one will be given in January. They have not decided if it will be all online, or will we have 2 parts just like the end of the year. But those will be optional, and school districts will decide whether or not they want to give those 2 optional
Isn't
parts.
that interesting, because they've told us at the state level, not optional. Every meeting I go to, they're saying required quarterly, so I don't think
Well,
they
it
know.
won't be quarterly. It won't be quarterly. It'll be once at the beginning of the year and once in December or January.
And these are the park ones, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And part is saying they're optional to states. And then states will decide, or districts will decide, whether or not you will be given
And the
it.
meetings I've been to, there was a state people, and they were telling us it's required, so I don't know.
So our state will probably ask you to give them. I do not think they can require you to give them, but it would make sense that you would want to give them because they will be aligned with the end of year assessment. They won't be quarterly. There's going to be one at the beginning of the year, and it could be one in the midterm of the year. And then there will be the 2 parts at the end of the year. So you can see that does add up to 4, but they're not really quarterly. Beginning of the year, mid-year, and a 2-part summative. And both parts of the summative will count towards the grade.
When you say the beginning, you don't mean as soon as the students return, like a diagnostic, do you?
I would say pretty early. I would probably say October.
October?
Back to where we are in the country. Any other questions on state testing or Common Core? So, you guys saw some samples today, and I'll show you a couple more, and I'll take you through one that I can give you a lot more detail on. I wrote about 100 of the lessons. I didn't write every single lesson, so the ones you don't like, I didn't write them. The ones you do like, I absolutely wrote them. So the lessons always have 3 parts. Every single part of the lesson, the first part of every lesson is called the launch. Now what's important in the launch is the launch is supposed to be an open-ended problem-solving exploration where kids are in groups and kids are exploring the mathematics without it being told explicitly to them. Some people would say discovery, and I really didn't write it to be discovery. I wrote it to be problem solving, where kids would be exploring problem solving, would be doing mathematics, without necessarily knowing the correct path, or the correct formula, or the correct definition yet. A la connected math, but not at the level of connected math of complete discovery of everything. But it was supposed to be a problem-solving exploration where kids were in groups working towards the mathematics. 10 to 15 minutes max. Some of them are 2 to 3 minutes because they're at the very beginning of a chapter. And as the chapter goes on, some of them are more deeper and will take 10 to 15 minutes. The second part of every single lesson is the explicit mathematics, where the mathematics is explicitly told through examples. There are clear definitions and clear examples. We did this because of the criticism that Connected Math got. That Connected Math never had clear examples. We did this explicitly to respond to that criticism, that there would be clear step-by-step examples in part 2 of every lesson. There's 3 examples in every lesson, and every example has 2 parts. There wasn't a real plan on how teachers would work with those examples, though. Well, I shouldn't say there wasn't. There was a plan. It hasn't really turned out that way. But the plan was each example would have 2 parts. One example you would do together as a class, and the second example kids would do individually. That was the plan. But how you do the examples is going to be up to you. You might do some examples in groups. You might do some examples individually. You might do some examples whole group. But the examples are explicitly teaching the mathematics, the definitions, the formulas. The last part is an assessment. There is a daily assessment, a formative assessment on a daily basis called a close and check. Every day. There's 5 to 6 problems, at the end of every lesson, and that's in the journal. Some teachers are using it as a quiz. Some teachers are using it as an exit slip. Some teachers are using it just to find out if you understood the lesson. That's how it was meant to be, any of those possibilities. But each lesson has all three of those parts. Part 1 and part 3 are in the journal.
Student companion?
Yeah, I just wanted to have one around. So, I lost this flight too. So this was a really, really long flight. What do you think I lost it? After I said I didn't want a journal, they made one, so I lost that one. Then I lost the look of the journal. I hate this book. Why? What? No, that's not it. I wanted it to be a one-page front and back.
Yeah, that's why I read it all.
And instead it's all left and right. You like it left and right like this, or you prefer front and back, where you just rip it out? You can't rip it out now because you'd be tearing off what? The next lesson, right? Who thinks of these things? Did they even bother that? Would you guys rather have front and back?
But sometimes the kids go to the close and check when they work.
They finish the launch and right to start.
Ah, yes, these should ask you guys too. It should be front and back, and then you wouldn't go on, well, some kids might still turn to it. So, now let me make a point here. I just came from Oklahoma City, but the week before I was in Canton. Of course, I didn't stop at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But Canton, Ohio asked me this. They said, can we have 4 pages to the journal? And Pearson said, yes. I cringed. But Pearson said, yes, you can have 4 pages. You can have 1 page for the launch, and you can have 2 pages to write your examples in, and then you have the 4th page for the close and check. Again, I don't want more paper. Right now, it's written so you do the first part together here in problem-solving groups, then you move to your notebook and do your examples. You have to grow up and start taking notes in a notebook. Then you come back and do the closing check in your journal. But other districts wanting to have it all in the journal. I want to ask you guys, you've probably never heard that before. What do you think?
No, I don't like no. We like
I like it.
The kids don't like to go back to
The kids don't like to go into the journal to the notebook. And that's why the Canton, Ohio teachers wanted a 4-page journal. It's your option. Pearson will do it for you, but Ohio teachers are agreeing, not a bad idea to get out of the journal and go to your notebook. Have to take notes, have to grow up, and get away from elementary school where everything's in your journal. But again, there are options available to you. You have to think about it as a school district and decide what's best for you and your kids. If it was my world, there'd be no journal and everything would be in the notebook. I lose. Okay, so there's this big ugly picture of how the book works. And this is a crazy picture. So I'm going to show it to you and then show you the different parts. Every single every single unit starts with an assessment. It's called a readiness assessment. It's a 30-question assessment that every kid takes, and that must be scheduled in the computer. There are 6 readiness assessments during the year. So they're about every 6 weeks. The readiness assessment is assessing kids' skills for the upcoming topics. So for instance, the first topic in 6th grade is algebra. Believe it or not, Common Core. So it's asking kids on the readiness assessment, are you prepared to do these algebra things? So what kind of topics might you have on the readiness assessment? Computation. Kids take this in a computer lab, 30 questions. I tell them, you should tell them you better take it seriously. Why should you take it seriously, kids? Because you get a lot wrong, you're going to get assigned a lot of additional intervention lessons. So the computer immediately grades it and immediately assigns each kid different interventions based on how they did on that assessment. Do the kids take it seriously? Do you tell them to take it seriously? They get 30 out of 30 right, they're not going to get too many intervention lessons. Probably none.
As the year went on.
As the year went on, they got.
Beginning was definite.
They got more serious?
Yeah.
And it was their goal to get none this time.
Oh, it's their goal to get no intervention lessons this time. That's pretty good. That's the program working perfect. Is that kids start to realize, hey, if I gotta do well. And kids, all kids are gonna struggle. We do have weak kids. We do have kids that have no idea how to add fractions, subtract fractions. So what are they gonna get? They're gonna get help. But that help's individual. You'll get different things assigned, and you get different things assigned, and you get different things assigned according to your weaknesses. And this is where that extra time in math class, kids should be doing those interventions. In theory, it should be a pull-out, not in replacement, in addition. You don't have that, so I'm going to expect or hope that sometime in your 80-minute clock, that kids would be working on their intervention lessons. And that would have to be one-on-one with the laptop, because each kid has different intervention lessons. You know how we handle intervention in America? Well, everybody's got a weakness, so let's all do this. And we all do the same thing. That doesn't work, because everybody's weakness is different. So kids get these readiness lessons after they take the assessment. The readiness lesson is really just a lesson to review all the material that's going to begin the chapter. They have a test, and then we have a whole class lesson. That whole class lesson does divide up into smaller groups. Also, kids get assigned a study plan. That study plan shows their weaknesses. Then you do the in-class lesson. Then you have homework. And then you have a self-care assessment. Now that picture, again, I think is really confusing. But what's the point? Every 6 weeks they take a test. They get assigned different things according to their weaknesses. Then you begin the unit. You begin the unit with a readiness lesson, and then you have lessons every day on the unit. Meanwhile, kids still have what? Intervention lessons assigned to them that they have to find time to work on. Now, maybe if a kid just has 1 or 2 intervention lessons assigned to them, that becomes homework. But if a kid gets 8 intervention lessons assigned to them, what do you call the co-teacher? The co-teacher or even the regular teacher, it doesn't matter to me, must be aware that Johnny has 8 intervention lessons and Susie just has 2 and Maddie has none. You have to be aware of that, and you have to find time to work with those kids who have several intervention lessons assigned to them. And let me tell you, the best part of the program, I think, is the intervention lessons. I think they're so cool, so interesting, and will really help kids who have weaknesses. I'm going to stop there and ask any questions, and everyone should see some of this stuff. I know that's a ton to handle. You guys want to add anything? Go ahead and say it. Come on, I can take it.
That's the hardest part, is the intervention lesson.
Right.
And their study plans.
Right.
To get them accomplished when there are kids who have, when not everyone has a good teacher. And when
One kid has
one kid has,
15.
like you said, 0 to is 8. And obviously the kids who have more assigned need more help to tell them to do it at home. It was assigned to them because they don't know it in the first place. And then they're not able to ask the questions if they go and do it at home. So it's, that's really hard to work in, even though it's valuable. I was not successful by trying various things
Right.
to get it to work out, and it's tough.
And it has nothing to do with really program, it has to do with how we handle intervention as a district. How we decide what intervention should be done, how they should be done. For Johnny, who has 10 things assigned to him, you finally know what 10 things he's weak at. And you don't have to do any grading to figure out what 10 things he was weak at. How are you going to get him the support to get those 10 intervention lessons completed? Because, Fred, how is he so weak that he got 10 things assigned, he's just going to do it for homework? That's not going to work. Go ahead.
Are there any enrichments?
Yes, there is enrichment for kids who have no intervention lessons assigned to them. Enrichment's not assigned by the computer. Okay, enrichment is there.
Oh,
Okay, but that when he takes the test, it doesn't say, oh, you can't enrich him. Okay, it says he's perfect, Now you have to assign, you have to do it. Okay? But there's an arrangement in every chapter. Right. Right. Yeah. Right, so explain me what you mean by specific teacher resource. Is that resource for replacement of regular class? Okay, so it's an addition. No, it is a replacement of regular class. Okay, so there are some kids that are pulled out and not. Time is different, but they're in a resource room isolated. So, yes, we're going to have kids with a lot of interventions. So how are you going to find time? How are you going to make sure that kids get all the intervention lessons completed, in addition to still doing the regular lessons every single day? I don't have an answer except my answer is the premise should be intervention should be in addition. The shift should be in addition.
You can also find that if your entire class or, 9 out of the 10 students have that intervention, there's nothing wrong with doing that as a mini lesson to the class.
They all want to.
And, that.
Right, but she's making a point that, okay, I think she's making a really good point. I got 10 kids in my class, Mr. President, now, and 9 of them got assigned the same intervention lesson. Well, I think there's a good argument there that I should now do that intervention lesson as whole class. Okay? It isn't a good idea because in the usual instances, your intervention is different than yours and yours is different than yours, which is different than yours. But if all your interventions are the same, it seems to make good sense to just do it in this whole class. So you're really looking at individual study plans of kids. And saying, okay, here's my class. Every one of this stuff, I can do those two things. No, they can be done from the LCD program. But again, the theory is, in most cases, you would have different interventions with different kids, so they should be done one by one. If they share the same interventions, it does seem to make sense to do them as a whole.
Another thing we do sometimes is go to like a journal day, if you get a computer lab, have the kids work on their individual journals on that day, and you can roam around and you can help individually. We've done that, like after they've done pre-assessments, they may work on, while others are still finishing them, they may work on those intervention lessons. There's a lot, we've all tried many different approaches. We've tried giving them homework, we've tried giving out stars, things to get them to do them. And one of the problems is, they don't all like to go to the lesson, they like to go directly to the journal pages that they have to do. And that's one of our biggest problems is they're not actually looking at the lessons, they're going directly to those handouts that I talked about that the kids have to hand in.
All the intervention journal pages.
Yeah.
So the intervention has a journal page that goes with it. You'll see it better when I pull up the intervention lesson. But just let me talk about the intervention lesson. They only have 2 parts. They don't have a problem solver. Why? Because they're intervention. So these kids are weak. We don't want to give them to have to explore something and problem solve. No. Intervention lessons have 2 parts. Examples and close and check. The examples and the close and check pair up with an intervention journal page. Now there is no hard book journal. You have to print out the intervention page for each intervention lesson. Why would there be no intervention hard book journal? Because again, in theory, yours are different than yours, and different than yours, and different than yours. So why should we give you a whole book if you're not going to use all of it? You're going to print out the journal page for each kid, whatever intervention lesson it is. That's what it looks like. But really, let me just go to show you the last thing. Well, that's what a close and check looks like. And this is important. This is a close and check. What it always has is skill here and open-ended questions here. And every close and check is like that. Skill on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, open-ended writing. Includes vocabulary, includes reasoning, and what we call error analysis, where you have to critique someone else's problem. Every day, that's how you end the lesson. with a page like that. What you do with it, up to you. Collect it, grade it, look at it, throw it away. Every day is one of those. How you use it, up to you. How you guys use it.
Grade it, and a lot of times we have to grade more than once because they don't do the lesson. They go straight to this. And, yeah, so there are problems that.
Let me back up though. I meant the regular in class.
We use that as an individual, we tell kids, after we do the launch to cancel the guidance, we say, this is your individual closure, do you know the lesson? So we make them do their closure check individually, me and Pat, that's what we've done.
So after every lesson, they do the close and check individually. It looks the same. This is from an intervention page. It looks the same in the regular lesson.
That's why I asked.
Okay. It looks the same. What was the question? It is, but it looks the same in a regular on-level lesson. Okay. Right. They're exactly the same. The close and checks in the intervention lesson or in the regular lesson. They look exactly the same. That's how they end every lesson, whether it's intervention or whether it's a regular or what we call on-level.
Except for the focus question.
Yeah, the focus question. I think it's not on there.
Not on there.
Homework is 100% digital online. Of course, if you want kids to do it in paper and pencil, you have to print out the page and hand it to the kid. Why do I not want that? Because I don't want you to have to grade homework ever again in your life. That was my #1 goal right in this program. The teacher would never have to grade homework again. But all homework we have digital online and completely graded automatically. And you would walk in the next day and see how many kids did their homework, what problems they got right, what problems they got wrong. Does it work that way? I'm not sure because I'm not sure what percent of your kids have access. These schools different? You mean average?
100% of it.
100%. Anybody else give me a number?
Well, they're 50%.
50. Difference.
I have 2 kids who use the dish. I have 2 kids who use it.
Okay. So, it's online, 100% digital. There's a help button online where kids can get help to do their homework. And the help is really, really nice. If a kid can't find internet access, doesn't want to come after school, doesn't want to go to the library, doesn't want to go to Uncle Joe's house, then you have to print out the homework and give it to the kid. And then you have to go back to grading. But the theory is that we hope is that in the future, we run a program for the future, that most kids will eventually have access or will find access because they don't want to do their homework.
Actually, I found opposite. We had several kids who had access to computers, did not want to go on the computer. You would think that they would. Wanted nothing to do with it. Go hard copy every single time.
Takes longer.
Takes long. Or you can be on Facebook and do your homework at the same time.
I don't know.
Automatic grade. So, there will be new excuses, by the way, of why kids don't do their homework. Okay? So there will be new excuses why kids don't do their homework. I know one district, I was actually in Vancouver, and the teacher said, I give the paper to every kid. Because I don't want the excuse that my internet was down. So she gives the paper copy to every single kid. And if your internet's down, you better do the paper copy. Because I don't want the excuse that your internet was down and couldn't do your homework. So again, you have the option. You have the option to give the kids the paper copy or to have them complete it online. This is what a study plan looks like. So a kid completes the readiness assessment, and you see this kid got 60% on it, and he got assigned study materials, and this is what he got assigned. He got assigned those things to work on. No, the computer automatically assigns it based on that readiness assessment. That's That's what a kid sees. A kid sees, I have to complete these things. You can set the passing score. I believe we set it at 65, is that right? So if you get 65% or better, you don't get anything assigned to you for that topic. You can change that if you want. You can run all kind of reports. And I think this is the best report ever. She said she loves it. This is a report that you get when homework is completed. So you run this report, and it shows you the homework and every problem of the homework, and which kid got right and which kid got wrong. So in other words, here's problem 1. I walk into class, 5 minutes before class, I run this report, and I say, okay, look at problem number 1. Everybody got it right except for 1. 2 people, I'm not going over that one. Everybody got it right in problem 2 except for 1. 3. Oh, look at this one. How many people got it wrong? 6. I'm definitely going over problem number 6. Okay? Problem number 7, 5 people got it wrong. I'm going over that one. Oh, problem 15. Well, probably half the kids didn't get there. But how many people got it wrong? 10. I'm going over that one. I no longer want you to stand up there and go, does anybody have questions on homework? You know who got it right and who got it wrong, and you can go over it.
Everyone that have the same question though, it's not the same question.
Everybody is a little confused on that. Everybody has the same homework question, but there are slightly different numbers. And we did that on purpose, so you couldn't cheat.
Then they all wouldn't, like say you're saying number 1, not everybody has that same question.
Same exact question, just different numbers. So your question might say, there are 5 girls and 4 boys, write the ratio. And her question says, there are 8 girls and 7 boys, write the ratio. Okay? So exact same question, but everybody has different numbers. You know, and they start figuring it out. I don't know if your kids figured out they were getting the same question with different numbers on them. So, and the idea was that you called someone else up, you mentioned what's going on here. But exact same content. You get that report every single day. You have to run the report, I should say. What's this column right here? Like I said, grade on homework. And then this is what we call an item analysis. To me, of all the things in the program, best thing in the program. But if kids are doing their homework paper and pencil, not helpful, right? You're going to have a whole blank. You're going to have kids with zeros up there. Some teachers here today are going to have paper and pencil zero. Nothing there. Here's another kid, paper and pencil. Okay? But that is a great report that you see every day on your homework. I don't know. Any question? You guys know, remember what the yellow
Might be
pen is?
half credit, partial credit.
Thank you.
We don't want it.
That's right. This is a look at an individual kid. Now, no, this shows me the whole class, right? And it shows me every problem they did and their grade. This shows me a kid. Now, I love this screen too. This shows me a kid. What information does this show me? How long they spent on every problem. This is okay. So this kid got half of it right and spent ridiculous. But I think they figure out eventually that I know how long they spent on every problem. If a kid spends 5 seconds on every problem, I know they're just clicking the damn button. And I might say something, you know, I know you spent 5 seconds on this problem, you didn't really do your homework. So that kid will just click the button and wait 20 seconds, right? And then click the button and wait 20 seconds. But that is still a screen that you can see on every individual kid. We are trying to take you into the future of data and how much data you can see on kids. This screen, this shows you various kids and the total amount of time they spent. So Caitlin did the homework assignment, got 70% right, 10.5 out of 15, and spent 13 minutes on the homework. Okay? Every kid with this total score and the total amount of time they spent. This was what? Individual problems and how much time they spent. You get all these screens and all this information. Here's one more screen. This shows Caitlin again, and it shows how much time on each of the homework assignments, how much time on the test. You see this homework assignment, you spent 1 minute on, clearly did not pass. The amount of information you get is unbelievable. And you know where it really, really comes in handy? Parent. I don't have to sit there and just say, well, you know, I think they did good here, your daughter's not doing this, work on this. I can pull up the screen, and I can show so much detail to any parent. So much detail, all saved under everything. This screen, this last screen here, this shows you the actual standard. So this shows you the standard here and the percent of kids who mastered that standard. So this is the screen by standard. All the other screens are by kid. You can also get it by standard. Now, it's way too much information, and I know ultimately you don't learn anything by listening to me. You have passwords now. You have a whole summer. Don't spend it on the beach, spend it in front of the computer. All right. I'm going to start going into some lessons I wrote, lessons that I like. But do you have any questions on all that information?
So, you're saying you don't want the students to use paper and pencil, but don't they have to learn to know their work?
They do, and open-ended problems and constructive response, they do. I didn't say that we want paper and pencil, I don't want a journal. I want you to do that. I want the kids to be able to do this in a high school, move to a high school model where they would do things in their own way. Not a journal that we frame and made for them. Make that transition to taking notes, making that transition to becoming more and more mature with your own work. Any other questions? All right, so you already saw some lessons today. When you log into the system, you did this morning, right? Looks like that. It's almost similar to what a kid sees too. And I'll tell you another long debate we had. Some of my team thought we shouldn't show the kids all the lessons. We should only show the lessons up to the day they're on. Because they might go ahead. And I said, oh my God, if the kid goes ahead, I'm happy as hell. It's not like you give them out a hard copy of the textbook. You only give them up to the lessons they're up to. They get every lesson. They can go ahead, they can read all the jokes, they can get all the answers. If you got geeky kids like that, go for it. Okay? They see everything. And their parents see everything too. They can get to any lesson at any time. So, this is 6th grade. You know the 6th grade common core starts with algebra. Starts with expressions and equations. Then it goes to number systems, fractions, decimals, goes to ratio. There's only 1 unit in geometry, and there's only 1 unit in statistics in 6th grade common core. That's all common core. Progress monitoring is really the assessment. You see the enrichment, you see the interventions. They're all there, you can see them all. I'm going to go into my favorite lesson, which is ratio. Good. It goes down, it locks you off like it is right now on me, and you can always use the DVD to run the lessons. Of course, I didn't bring my DVD. So I'm still waiting to log that on.
I have an 8th grade.
8th grade. How often you use the DVD? How often do you use the internet?
I use my phone.
Use the DVR every day. And I'm going to pick a ratio proportion lesson. And 6th grade, topic 10. I'm going to pick the very first lesson. So, this is the beginning of Unit D. Just like the beginning of any unit. What's it start with? A readiness assessment. Where that must take place? Computer lab. Okay, 30 questions. Everybody, you gotta take it seriously. You get extra homework if you do more. Use that extra homework. Okay. Let's pretend that day has just finished. That day has just finished. Everybody now has been assigned intervention lessons according to how you've done. Now you come together the next day. The next day you're about to start the unit. To start the unit, though, you start together with a readiness lesson. So there's an assessment they take individually, then we come together as a lesson, and we do a readiness lesson together. So here is the readiness lesson for ratio. One of my favorites that I wrote, and it's all about kids making playlists for their iPod. Alright, so you see at the beginning, whole class begin, readiness lesson. Now, the most important button you're going to realize is down at the bottom here. How many screens does it have? 4. It says 1 of 4. This is my favorite button right here. Okay? Pretend you're on your smartboard and you're standing right here at your smartboard. I hate to have to go walk over there to click the arrow. So what do you think that left-right button does? Yeah, so you just click that button on your smartboard, and then it'll move. And then you have to put it there. Is that a full button? Alright, the show's over, that's all. That's all you need. Alright, so, here we go. The readiness lesson.
And I love the dance period. I make lists all the time. I have to think more than just rhythm. I use math too. Math lets me know how many songs I need for a show. Math keeps the beats in order. Not sure what I'm talking about? I'll show you right after this song.
So what are we trying to do? We are trying to engage, we are trying to draw you in. So we're going to do something cool. We're always going to try to use animation and video and music. Today's lesson, we're actually going to be making a playlist. Every single word on the screen will read. I don't know how often you'll read. Did you push the read button every time? Okay, so maybe more at the beginning than at the end, but everything will be ready if you choose.
What do you think is the typical length of the songs you listen to on the radio? How did the number of songs you can play in a certain amount of time depend on how long the songs are?
Now again, this is not a regular lesson, so readiness lesson. But this is a time for you to say to kids, hey, turn to your partner, turn to a friend, and can you discuss this for a minute? What's the answer, by the way? What's the typical length of the song on the radio? 3 minutes? 3.5? 3:31? Doesn't Billy Joel have a song about this? Yeah. Right. Have to cut it down to 3:05? On that line? Sure. Isn't the song The Entertainer? So it's somewhere between 3 and 3:10, believe it or not. Once it gets above 3:30, radio stations don't like to play it. 4-minute songs kill radio station behavior. How does the number of songs in a certain amount of time depend on how long the songs are? The longer the songs, the less. The less number of songs that you can have on your playlist. That's why radio stations hate long songs. Because they want to constantly what? Rotate and have different songs on for the listener. The longer the song. So right away, what are we trying to do? Show math in the real world in a way that interests kids. In a way that tries to draw them in. Today, what are you going to do?
Today, you are going to be a DJ at a radio station. First, we'll look at some examples about playlists to review these skills. Dividing whole numbers, representing fractions, and simplifying fractions. Then your class will break into teams and use these skills to design a playlist.
Okay, members of this lesson, you are getting ready to study what? Ratios. So in order to ready to study ratios, we're going to have to practice dividing whole numbers, representing fractions, and simplifying fractions. Now, a lot of you took that assessment yesterday and didn't do too well on that. So you already have intervention lessons assigned to you in all those areas. But we're going to review it today as a whole group. We're going to review some of those things, and then we're going to break up into 2 teams. And it's probably going to be more than 2 teams. They're probably going to be about 5 or 6 teams. But teams will be identified by the readiness lesson. Each kid will get a letter assigned to them, a G or a K.
G is high.
G is good.
G is good. Each kid will get assigned to them a G or a K. You'll put the G's together and the K's together. Not all together. You might have 10 G's and you'll put them into groups of 3 or 4. You might have 8 K's and put them into groups of 3 or 4. The G's will get one assignment and the K's will get a different assignment. G's good, so G's a higher assignment?
Yeah.
G's good, G's great. I finally have a way to remember. You know how many days we spent arguing this? I'm like, what the hell's G and K? Why can't we call it A and B? Like, kids will figure it out if they're A or B. It's like, they don't figure it out if they're G or K.
No, they really never did.
They really never did.
They were mostly K.
There were no G's.
Now notice it says 3, 4, 4. That means I'm done the what? I'm done that section up the top. I'm done the intro. So let's go to the other. Again, this is readiness. That's 3 examples. You see how it's a little slow because I'm on the internet. Okay, here's your work.
You make a 60-minute playlist using songs that are 4 minutes in length. How many songs do you have?
Simple, right? Simple. You guys got 5 minutes in your groups. Go ahead and work on that. You guys don't have to. Okay. You can just click and hit show answer, or you can have kids come up and what? Do it. I would rather have kids come up and do it. You want to hit show answer, be my guest. But why is the show answer there? Kids are absent, for mom at home, for all of those purposes. The show answer is there for anybody who wants to hit the button when they're doing it outside the classroom. It is written so well, I believe what I wrote is, I hope so. Okay. That kids can learn and parents can help them learn outside the classroom. And we did it a second way, we did it that way. And those are the 2 ways we came up to do this problem. Very simple to begin with. Why? Just simple readiness. Example 2. Yeah, song. G and K really doesn't come into play yet. The examples are the same for everyone. Okay? Example 2.
A band is making its set list for a concert using the types of songs shown below. What is the fraction of songs that are by other artists?
5 songs from my latest album, 12 songs from my earlier album, 3 songs by other artists. And you find the fraction that are from other artists. What I'm trying to do with these lessons is interest you enough to want to do it. Okay? Again, you want to have a kid come up to the whiteboard and write on it, you have this little button down here that says working out. All working out does is clear space. All it does is kind of shrink it and give you space. Okay? And then if you want to just pop up the solution, you can pop up the solution. You notice how the solution is really shown step by step by step. Example 3.
A DJ at a radio station plays 10 songs in a row during a 35-minute segment. How long is one song if all of the songs have the same length? Write your answer as a fraction in simplest form and then as a mixed number.
Again, whole group, we're going through those 3 simple skills together to prepare for ratios. Those 3 examples are done as a class. Then we go to the close. And the close is where we're going to break up into G's and K's. And kids will have different sheets. Okay? So you actually have to print that out. It's under teaching support here. And you see Team G activity and Team K activity. Team G activity and Team K activity. They'll look slightly different, with the G1 being slightly harder. And now kids will work in their groups. I'm going to show you K. Here's K's. Here's K's. You look at K's, what do K's have to do now? They have to make a playlist. The directions say you just got a job at your radio station. For your first match, you need to make a playlist for the radio station. The diagram below gives you the length of each radio segment. Commercials 4 minutes. Pop songs 8 minutes. Commercials 4 minutes. Classic rock songs 40 minutes. Commercials 4 minutes. A pop song is 4 minutes. A classic rock song is 5 minutes. And commercials a half a minute. You now work in your group. How many pop songs do you need? How many classic rock songs do you need? How many commercials do you need? You're practicing what? Division, mixed numbers, improper fractions, and you're practicing all that in your group. Ultimately, as your group works through this, you're going to turn and you're going to make a report. Your report, as you go through that, your report is going to be your total number of pop songs, total number of classic rock songs, total number of commercials, and the fraction of the playlist time for each. And then you're going to report out. You're going to report out. Every readiness lesson is like that, where there's 3 examples to kind of get you ready for the upcoming material, and then you break up into groups, and you do some kind of report. You guys like the readiness lessons?
There.
Some of them.
Tell me like them enough. That's kind of the opinion I get. Some are cool. I like this one. Some are like, what the hell is he doing? Readiness lessons are not absolutely required. They're not. What's absolutely required is the readiness what? Assessment. If you feel like you do the readiness assessment and maybe skip the readiness lesson and take a day to do what? Intervention. That's not a bad idea. Maybe a kid who has no intervention does the what? Readiness. Readiness lesson is completed. You're now going to start the what? You're now going to start the first lesson of the chapter. The first lesson of the chapter 10.1, ratios. They have 3 parts. Remember 3 parts? What are they? Launch, examples, close, and checks. Now, this one has a 4th part. It has an introduction, only because it's the first one of the unit. So it's going to give you an overview of what you're going to learn for the next 2 weeks, approximately. Here's the overview of what you're going to learn in ratio.
Apples and pears. Yeah, so as in squares. Even fish and plants. In this topic, we're going to make a lot of comparisons and see how they're helpful for making plans, predictions, and decisions. We're making different math models that can be used for making comparisons and figure out which models are helpful in which situations. So, there are some ways to compare quantities. If you immediately thought ratios, you were absolutely correct. But, on this topic, there are other ways too. Let's see how we use a ratio to write another ratio. Can you pick why you might want to do that? Okay. Let's go with it. And even know what it means for 2 ratios to be equivalent. Finally, we'll answer the age-old question. Why might someone want to write a ratio as a fraction or as a decimal? So, there we have it. Enjoy ratios. I'm tired. Oh, good work out there.
Now, I will tell you, I wrote this whole script. He ad-libbed about 10 different lines in there. But I thought he turned out pretty good. And he does a lot of our, what we call hosts, our live hosts. He's in every lesson. Although we have different hosts. We have 6 different hosts. This gentleman's name is Jay. And he comes out in all the ratio lessons. We have different hosts for different lessons. Is Jay favorite 6th grade? Jay's favorite 6th grade?
Lisa's a favorite.
What?
Lisa's a favorite.
Lisa's the favorite?
Oh, yeah.
Lisa's the favorite. Well, I like Jay. He's an actor. We interviewed at least 50 actors before he settled on these 6. Jay's my favorite. Lisa was, I didn't think was that funny. She's cute. Yes, she is cute. She's very, very cute. But Jay adds in every single thing I wrote. He would never stay to the script. So we think about it. But again, that's only over, it's only at the beginning. Go launch. The launch is supposed to be a what? Problem-solving experience. The launch is supposed to be small groups. Small groups doing a problem-solving experience. It's almost always open-ended. This one is very, very simple because it's the first lesson of the chapter.
A gift shop sells boxes of fruit online, including this box of apples and pears. Use numbers to compare the fruit in 3 different ways.
So this is supposed to be about ratios. Did I define what a ratio was? No. Did I show an example of a ratio? No. What we're trying to figure out is kids in small groups for 5 to 10 minutes. Will anybody even write the ratio down? Well, all they write is there's more apples than pears. Okay? Well, all they write is there's 8 apples and 4 pears. It's supposed to be an exploration to find out what our kids know. And all of the opening launches are like that. Kids should be in small groups for 5 or 10 minutes with their journal page open because the launch is in journal page. Trying to explore and write 3 different ways. 6th grade teachers, did anybody write a ratio? Some? Very good. Because the chapter is on ratio. Did you tell the chapter was on ratio? But because you're an interactive program, you can do stuff like this. You can move the stuff around. Because you're an additional program. You can move the stuff around. And maybe if you move the stuff around like this, you get some kid to write what? There's twice as many apples as pears. 2-to-1 ratio, maybe someone writes. If you want to pull up the companion page, that's what we call the page in the book. You can pull it up online by just hitting that button. And this is the exact page the kid sees in their book. The exact page. What page is it? If you have a sixth grade book, if you have a sixth grade book, it's on. Solution? Well, it's silly to pull up the solution here because it's open-ended, right? I mean, I wrote down 3 solutions, but I mean, your kids could come up with way more solutions than that. Now you go to the example. The launch is problem solving, small groups. The examples are explicit, detailed definitions. Each example has how many parts? 2. Some have 3. The examples are not in the journal. You have to transition to kids taking notes. If you want them in the journal, that option is available. Example 1. This one has 3 examples. Almost all of them have 3 examples. Some of them have a key concept. I like to do the key concept at the end. Example 1.
A ratio is a relationship in which for every x units of one quantity, there are y units of another quantity. The quantities x and y are the terms of the ratio. You use ratios to make comparisons. The ratio of the number of squares to the number of circles is 4 to 3. You can also write this ratio as 4:3.
Okay, so the example is explicit. One of the things that I can't get them out to criticize from is never told explicit definition. We do tell them, but we don't tell them first. You have to do problem solving first, then move to the explicit example. Use the animation and the color explicitly. 4 blue squares, 3 red circles, and the blue 4 and the red 3. That's really the visual effect for kids to see. Then we make this transition. This has how many screens? You gotta be careful. You don't go to the second example without finishing all the screens. Again, that animation, that cool factor of it. Now, you guys have to do this. You got 20 seconds.
Write 2 different ratios to compare the number of headphones and the number of portable music players.
And you're going to be doing that where? Okay. Not deep. Why? It's the first example. Just supposed to begin to get the understanding of what a ratio is. What kind of answer do I get here? Some kids say 6 to 6, but they don't count very well. Okay. All right. But here's what I want to show you, which is a great feature. Is this solution is animated. Not all the solutions are animated. Sometimes the solution is just written. But this one is animated. And think about the uses of this. Think about the uses for parents. Think about the uses for kids who are absent. Think about an animated solution that will show you how to get this answer.
First, separate the objects into 2 groups. Then count the objects. There are 5 headphones. And there are 6 portable music players. The ratio of the number of headphones to the number of portable music players is 5 to 6. You can also compare the objects in the reverse order. To compare the objects in the reverse order, write the ratio of the number of portable music players to the number of headphones. ratio of the number of portable music players to the number of headphones is 6 to 5. Two ratios that compare the number of headphones and the number of portable music players are 5 to 6 and 6 to 5.
Again, tell me it's not cool. The color, the animation, we're really trying to interest kids. All our videos, no video goes more than 90 seconds. But believe it or not, that's the attention span. Okay, 90 seconds. Kids absent, hey, you can figure that out. You can watch that, right? Mom can watch that. Mom can help you with your homework. You don't get that in connected math too much, do you? Okay. So here we go. Solutions there, 6 to 5, 5 to 6. And you have a third screen. What's the third screen? The second part of the example. Each example has two parts. This is the second part.
Write the ratio of the number of fish to the number of plants.
And then kids see something, see Jay on the screen. So if Jay's on the screen, he must have something to say to us. Let's see what Jay has to say.
The plants provide oxygen for the fish. So knowing the ratio of the number of fish to the number of plants is very important, especially if you want to keep those fish happy and healthy. Go ahead. Oh, I'll miss you too, my friend. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. My bad.
Again, he added in the end of the line there. But what's his purpose? His purpose is really A, B, give you a reason why you got to do this. The plant and the fish do have some kind of symbiotic relationship. And now, in your notebook, you can write the ratio of the number of fish to the number of plants. This is the end of the example, what we call a got it. Every got it can be changed to multiple choice. But it's up to you. You can keep it open like this, or you can hit the button that says what? Show answers. And you can automatically change it to a multiple choice. Now, where some people really like that is some schools that I visit have clickers, and they use the clickers here to take a poll of the kids. But every got it can be changed to a multiple choice. It doesn't have to be, but it can. You show the correct answer, and then you can click Show Solution. That was only the first example. I had how many parts? Actually, two parts. Second example, it gets harder. Why is this example harder? Well, what's it comes out? Why is it harder? First example really just had, you have count the headphones and count the music players. It was part to part ratio. What's this ratio? It gives you the part and gives you the what? Whole. And you have to find the other part. I wrote every example trying to get them easy, a little bit harder, and a little bit harder.
You toss a coin 12 times and get 7 heads. Write the ratio of the number of heads to the number of tails.
And no animation this time. The solution just is written out. Got a second one? And this one's controversial. I want you to listen to her speak this time and tell me why I got a lot of heat over what she says.
You have read 20 books from a series of 23 books. Write the ratio of the number of books you have not read to the number of books you have read.
You like what I did or not? What did I do? What? I had her emphasize the word not. And we had a huge fight over that. You want her emphasizing the word not or not emphasizing? Right. It is italicized. You really can't see it that way, right? I believe that kids have to start to learn those clues. And if they hear those clues, then they'll start to look for those clues. You can hit They said got it, so you can turn it into a what? Multiple choice. You show the correct answer, and you can show the solution. Third example gets more and more detailed. This one, oh, the kids go, Jay's back. This example is even harder.
The table shows the results from the 6th grade election for class president. You can write different ratios to describe the election results.
Well, this is a good question, so I guess you gotta go to the what? Next screen. I forgot to hit you at it. Every kid's yelling at me. Now, what's Jay have to say? What's Jay have to say?
This table shows the results from the 6th grade election for class president. Way to go, Devin. And Joel and Micah, don't give up. There's always next year. You can use the ratios of the votes to prepare for the next election.
So, Jay did not act this. We're trying to tell, you need to help Jordan and Micah. I will tell you a quick story. Jordan is my daughter. Jordan's my 10-year-old. She's so happy she's in the book. And I said, Jordan, you know, you're in the book, right up there. She said, oh, that's great. And she looked at me and she said, Dad, how come I lost? But look how difficult the problem is now. It's the last example. You have 5 parts to it. 5 parts to it. And this is another opportunity to do what in your classroom? Stop, put them in small groups for 5 to 10 minutes, and you work on all 5 of these together in your small groups. Don't teach every one of these examples as whole group. There's 5 parts of it. It's a good time to split your class up and work on it. Then come back together and then have a kid go up to the smartboard and then just drag the answers down. How am I doing? You drag the answers down, you hit check. Ah, we do good. And you get to try again. I still got it wrong. And you hit check, you got it right. Now, I'm going to point out one thing here. Is that if you hit solution here, look at the solution. And the thing I want to point out here is that you can never get that in a print book. Why not? Not the color, the length. A print book would never let you write that detail in the solution because they would have to make copies of all of that. And it would take up too many pages in the book. But I can make all that detail because there is no limit to how much I write in the visual book. So I can have so much detail. For each example, I can redo what? The table. I can recolor the table. And show kids explicitly how to do each problem. Couldn't do that in print. I like to go back to the key concept at the end of the lesson, and the key concept summarizes the lesson. Here's the key concept today. You learned 3 things, part, whole, and whole part. Here's the problem over here. I click part, there it is. I click part, whole, it changes. I click whole part, and it changes again. Again, is that not cool? Where do you end the lesson? Close and check. The teachers were saying earlier, they used the close and check as individual. The close and check is always back in the what? Journal. And it looks like this. Focus question up top. Skill on one side, open-ended on the other side. And that is the end of the lesson. There's a lot there, right? But just like in a Write-Word book, you won't do every example. You do every example in a Write-Word book? No, you'll pick and choose what you like, right? You like this one? This one's too easy, this one's too hard. You'll pick and choose what you write. Which one's funnier, which one's not? Which one has better graphics? You'll pick and choose it a lot there. Every lesson starts with a launch. 3 examples, close the check. Every lesson. Questions before we take a break? Anything you guys want to add? Could you do them in 45, 55 minutes or not? How long do you usually take?
60 to 40.
An hour.
I said it.
I have 1:30, so let's take a break to 1:45. 41 different states. In every school, one of the main goals is differentiate instruction. Most people have no idea what that really means. But one of the things I think we have tried to do in the program is that kids take this assessment and they get different assignments. And they have different intervention assignments and the differentiations already done. There is a slight problem that I told them 6 months ago they need to fix, so they still have it, is that as a teacher, you cannot see which kid has been assigned to which intervention lesson. This is what I asked you to do. The day they take the readiness assessment, when they finish, they should go log into their own study plan, and that you should go around and take some notes about who's been assigned what intervention lessons.
Or let the kids copy it on an index card for us.
If you trust the kids to copy
I have a spreadsheet that I walked around and
You have a
all the
spreadsheet?
names and just put a check mark in the column.
They could, that's another thing. They could print screen.
Yeah, but you don't.
But
now
you have to scroll.
Yeah, if a kid who gets 400 lessons, you won't see it.
You can't see, so I guess I scroll it.
We tried that one.
So after they take the readiness assessment,
They have to go into their study plan. And as someone said, take a clipboard, and she marks down what everybody's been assigned, so she knows what they've been assigned. And now that clipboard becomes your differentiating instruction log. It becomes your log of what people have been assigned and what people have to work on. And the differentiation's done for you. The problem still is finding the time to get that individual differentiation done. How are you going to find the time? Are you going to dedicate one of the 80-minute blocks to that? Are you going to dedicate half of one of the blocks to it? How you're going to get the time to do that is still a question you have to answer. But believe me, that question exists whether you use a digit or any other program. Because it doesn't matter what school you're in or what program you're in, everybody wants to do differentiating instruction. And believe me, it's practically impossible to do because you don't know what to assign people. And this program at least gives you that. I want to show you an intervention lesson now. I think they're way cool because the one thing they do different is the journal page and the intervention lesson, the digital part, are paired together in a sense that you'll go through the example, but the last part of the example, unlike the regular lesson, the last part of the example in an intervention lesson, there's no solution. You have to do the last part of the intervention lesson your what? Yourself. So here is an intervention lesson. There are 25 different clusters from 3rd grade multiplication all the way to algebra. There are over 100 intervention lessons. I picked fractions as my favorite problem. So this is fraction. Notice it just starts with examples. No problem solving because it's intervention. 5 screens. In theory, Johnny's here working on fractions, Maria's here working on multiplication, and Susie's over here working on geometry. Each of them have the corresponding journal page for their lesson. How do you get that journal page? I haven't even showed you that the teacher support is built in. But anytime you want something related to the lesson, you just click up your teacher support and look. Overview, and there's your journal page. And you would print out the corresponding journal page for each kid. I'm going to print it up here. Here's the corresponding journal page. it's got a part 1 got it. Just like the got it to the regular lesson, right? But there's no solution button on the screen. You have to do it where? Part 2 got it. No solution on the screen. You have to do it on paper. Part 3 got it. And then the lesson check. 2 pages for every single intervention lesson. Now I think what some of the teachers were saying is the kids just start the journal page and weren't going through the screens. Well, going through the screens help you do that page. And let me show you how it's supposed to work. You get your journal page in front of you, and you're supposed to, part 1 guide, you're supposed to view part 1. Here's part 1.
The lesson goal is to find equivalent fractions. You already know that a fraction can describe a part of a whole. Different fractions can mean the same amount. Fractions that mean the same amount are called equivalent fractions. This model shows 3/4. There are 4 equal parts. 3 of the 4 parts are shaded. To find a fraction equivalent to 3/4, start with the 3/4 model. Then, divide each fourth into 2 equal parts. The second model has 8 equal parts. So the denominator of the equivalent fraction is 8. Now, count the number of 8s that are shaded. The same amount is shaded in both fraction models. 3/4 and 6/8 are equivalent fractions. So 3/4 equals 6/8.
Now again, that's just visual. Doesn't show you the what? The process. Just visual. There's 2 more screens, 3, 4. Try to see which one of these 3 is equivalent. Which one? 8/10? No. 9/12? No. Yes, about 12/15? No. And we do just expect the kids to clean. Screen 5? Oh. There's nothing to click. There's no solution button. Because this is the exact problem under what? And now you fill in the answers here, you shade the proper blocks. That's the first part of the intervention lesson. Part 2, we're going to show you the process.
These 2 models show equivalent fractions, 3/4 and 6/8. Look at the relationship between the denominators of the 2 fractions, 4 and 8. If you multiply 4 by 2, you get 8. Now, check out the relationship between the numerators of the 2 fractions, 3 and 6. If you multiply 3 by 2, you get 6.
Now show them the process.
Hey, the pattern is the same. Check out this key concept below.
It went from just visual now to how to do it. Another screen. You do one yourself. Can't get it wrong. And then, the last screen, there's no solution button. It's the same as your what? Journal page, but this journal page actually has 4 of them. 4 of them to do. You do those 4 now. Part 3. Part 1 was just visual. Part 2 showed you with these little arrows what to multiply by. Part 3, we're going to take that away. You have to do it yourself.
The mandible of this stagbeetle is 3/8 inch long. The front leg is 15/16 inch long.
Here's 1, 2. Notice it's taken away now. You have to figure out what to multiply by to get the equivalent fraction. And then the last screen, you gotta do it yourself. There's no button to hit. And it's the same thing on your journal page, right there. Then you do the lesson check, which is almost similar to the lesson check in a regular lesson. On the left-hand side is skill, on the right-hand side is reading. That's an intervention lesson. I think they're written step by step by step, I wrote it, to really help a kid who is struggling with that concept. In theory, though, you're supposed to be working with the computer and working with paper and pencil journal page simultaneously. If every kid can't make equivalent fractions in the class, and every kid gets assigned this, again, I have no problem with the whole class doing this lesson. See how the intervention lessons are quite different, though, than the regular lessons. No problem solving. And also notice, there's really no button to click for her to read. It just starts reading automatically to you. So obviously, if there's several intervention lessons going on, kids need your headphones. No, these are supposed to be simultaneous. You're not holding a kid back because he doesn't understand fractions. You're intervening, so you're giving him or her support, but you're not holding them back because then how are they ever going to get them? In theory, again, some schools have that extra aid for another kid. That's the model that pushes me. If you have 10 intervention lessons, how are you ever going to come on that? Unless I give you an extra class. You only have 2 intervention lessons. When we see kids have this many weaknesses assigned, I want one extra class once a week to do those intervention lessons. What? Well, many schools leave an intervention. Questions on intervention. There's 100 of them. They're simple, they're basic. Teachers, intervention. Any other comments on intervention? Besides the fact that the kids did journal pages without reading the lessons.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot. If you had to suggest a little bit of the 4 parts of the regular lesson, taking away some part of that to do some intervention, what part? The launch,
No, I would never take the launch away. I would never take the multi check away. I think you would skip some of the examples.
in between,
Yes.
just to get more time for study.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Remember, for example, each one have 2 parts. You don't get to do all of them.
Okay.
You know, you can just do one part of each exam.
Okay.
Not have to do both parts of each exam. Like skip the balance. You know, I just think there is too much there. The reason we wrote too much is it's easy to take something away.
Yeah.
It's hard if I don't put enough in there. I never want you to have. I don't think you ever have to go, man, I need more material. You don't ever need to find something else. Then the last thing I want to show you is the homework. Okay? So let's go back to the ratio lesson. And I did the lesson 10.1. Let me show you the homework. See, it's level G, level K. We'll say level K homework. This is what homework looks like. The kid would log on and sees this screen. And here's the first problem. Problem says there are 8 girls and 7 boys in the 6th grade March plan, right? Ratio is to compare the number of girls and the number of boys. Now, by the way, I'm doing this homework, and my friend's doing the homework, and he's got the same problem, but let's say 5 girls and 8 boys. Also, all the answers are going to be in a different order. So your answer could be C, your answer could be D. You might have the same questions, you just scramble. We try to prevent cheating every way possible. Kids figure it out eventually. Okay? We try to. Why? Because the computer can do it. Now, here's the one that I hate, and I know you guys hate it too. is that we were so nice that we give kids 3 chances to get it right. And I hate that. I think you should be able to just give kids 1 or 2 chances. But we give them 3 chances.
And there's only 4 choices.
On some, there are only 4 choices. That's right. Okay? Now, I promise, I'm trying to get this fixed. Okay? It's on my list that you should be able to set the 2 choices. Yes.
When we're changing that, we still
I know, it doesn't work.
what is that?
I think that it just doesn't work. Okay. So, I can click on and then hit check answer, and it's sorry, not correct, because there's actually how many answers here? 2. So check on those 2, check, not correct. I'm on my 3rd choice now. And if I get it wrong this time, then it gets marked wrong.
Similar, no, you could do similar answer.
Is marked wrong? I'll show you that in a second. Let me go to the next problem. This one is, in a sense, open-ended, not multiple choice. And we do computer problems that are not multiple choice. You have to type the answer. Okay? So that's why I want to move on. Over here, by the way, is such a cool thing. If you ever want to type a fraction, now this problem makes no sense to type a fraction. The answer is 5 to 3, right? But if you wanted to type a fraction, you just hit this button, and you can type a fraction. Now tell me that's not cool. Okay? And if you want to type a mixed number, you hit this button, and you would type a mixed number. So all that's in there. If you want to type an exponent, that's in there too. Not that again, exponent makes any sense here. You type an exponent. All right, now, if you need help, you have no idea how to do this problem. There's 2 things on the right-hand side that are helpful. There's actually a bunch over there. I only think there's 2 things that are helpful. Help me solve this is the first button, and view an example. View an example, I think, the most helpful. It'll just give you the exact same problem with different numbers. So I hit view example. Remember, this problem is 5 boys and 3 girls, right? I hit view example. It says 10 boys and 12 girls. It says now, this is what you should do. Remember, a ratio compares quantities of x and y to each quantities. The ratio of x to y is x colon y. Quantities x and y return to the ratio. Hit continue. The correct form of the ratio is number of boys to number of girls. Number of boys colon number of girls. Hit continue. Write the ratio 10 colon 12. Is that not cool? Step by step by step. Now you have to close that and go do the exact same problem with what?
This is what the kids do at home. They've told us that. Like, once these features are available, they go home and they'll open the example and then they just switch the numbers to the numbers of the problem.
And to me, that's good. To me, that's
They're
learning.
learning this.
Okay?
But they do that.
You see the question for the girls?
Wow, they didn't trick me, huh? Check the answer? Nope. Check answer? And I got it right.
Second question, on the last one, we read it and, well, you know, we do sets as well.
What?
Sometimes they want it.
You have to be careful. A lot of times it'll mark something wrong when like they just didn't round properly if it asks for it. Or if things are inputted improperly according to how the computer will allow it. You know, so there are times where the computer will mark things wrong and the kids will be like, wait, I got that right.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah. Oh, really? So maybe. Oh.
You would expect to see 5%.
That's it. No?
Only, and you wouldn't expect them to reduce.
Well, honestly, there's 2 points in that. One, problem didn't say reduce. 2, I think the skill here is writing the ratio, not reducing the ratio. So it's up to you here how much emphasis you want to put on reducing in addition. Let me just show you what the other button does to help me solve this. To help me solve this does this. So to help me solve this has the same exact numbers. And this time it says, it asks you a question. The question is, what is the correct form of the ratio of number of girls and number of boys? So which one is correct? This one? Okay. Excellent. What is the ratio of number of girls and number of boys? 3. Okay. Well done. It's taking you through, it prompts you with questions that you should be thinking about when doing the problem. So those two buttons are slightly different. Help me solve this and view an example. But I think this is the power of online homework. Again, when moms sit with the kids, the few moms that do, the few dads that do, that's pretty powerful. And you say kids are using it, hey, to me, that's better than not doing your homework at all. Kids are looking at viewing an example and then just changing the numbers. That I'm happy. But it's all online homework.
So what if you didn't have the show me an example and just had to help me solve it? And then walk them through that, and then they have to do a simpler exercise, and they're not just pushing the button.
Right.
Could we, is there any way to, you can't disable?
No.
I was just thinking short term.
The video and the animation are not specific to the problem. They're more generic. The view and example and help me solve this are specific to the problem. The video and animation are just generic and don't change for the whole homework assignment. They're generic. That's homework. Usually 15 problems a day. You can change it. You can make it less. You can make it more. You can give any assignment you want to kids. When you're in as a teacher, you can change the amount of problems. Kids that are in the G group get assigned some harder problems at the end. The computer-based readiness assessment picks who is G and who is K. Again, you can change that too. If you have K kids who are all sudden doing good, you can make them G. You can change kids out of group. Questions? Guys, have you used the math tool at all?
Just not the videos explaining. Yeah, those are not good.
Which one?
Video,
Yeah. You don't watch videos, you just click, right? Every lesson has math tools built in. They're saying they're not using them much. I don't think you will until you're really comfortable with more of the program. I just want to add a couple other features. You know that your teacher support is built in. You don't need a teacher's edition, but if you want a lesson plan, you just go up to teacher support and you can print out a lesson plan. It's all there and you can print it out. But I think the only way you're going to learn the lesson is the night before, 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before class. Go through it yourself. But all the plan is there. You can get the teacher's guide, the lesson notes, you can get the union guide, and here's how you print the homework. You never have to leave the screen. It's all there. Your lesson guide, your homework. All there for you. It gives you a sample pacing, but that's just my guess at pacing. I mentioned the tools. The tools are up here, and you have these tools built into the program. If you want to bring up a coordinate graph, if if you want to bring up internships, if you want to bring up a number line, they're all there built into the program. Of course, there's nothing wrong with going out on the web and using all the websites that you know that do these things also. But if you want to bring up a real quick coordinate grapher of the full plane, we have the tool built into the program, and it is an interactive tool. And all these tools are built in, but you might have a website that does this also. And I think these tools are very cool. But you have to learn how to use each of these tools. There are videos, but you know what? How you learn is sit there and play. That's the plane or the coordinate grapher tool. If you want to see what the number line does, you want to add and subtract fractions on a number line, there's the tool. There's 5/3 or 4/3. And I want to add, say, 2/3. And I get 2. Do you like that? We call that a double number line. I just showed 4/3 goes 2/3 and 2. All the directions were right up there, were they not? I don't think I need you to watch the video. It says right up here, click on the first denominator to change its value. And now it says drag the blue point along the number line to model. Right up here, click the set value. I'm now going to subtract. I'm going to subtract 2 3/4. With the set value. Kids have access to those tools to do their homework, and you have access to use any tool in any lesson. But unless you practice with these tools, you're not going to find them valuable until you play around with them. But they're all there, they're all interactive. And again, you probably know a lot of websites in the National Library, virtual manipulative systems, things like that, that will do some of these things. Our tools are cool, but you got to play around. There's also the Spanish button. Down here, if you notice, the S is the Spanish button, which will change anything into Spanish. It will not read in Spanish. It will just change the text and translate any screen to Spanish. Also down here, you can print any screen, and B obviously is a vocabulary button where you can pull up the glossary, the digital glossary, and you can look up any term. M-term, mean, there's a digital glossary. What did I forget, guys? Yes. So, my guess is you're still doing tests, paper and pencil, and printing them out? Wow. So again, you can print out your test paper and pencil, you still have to grade them, or you can schedule the computer lab, you can do your test online, and it will be graded for you. You have that option, right? Question?
I had to go back in and check everyone that was marked wrong to see, because sometimes the computer would only recognize very specific ways of typing in an answer that would be acceptable in other forms.
So the ones that were not multiple choice, you
Right.
have to go and check.
Yes. So I did preview back and then had to give partial credit or full credit back. So it didn't eliminate.
Probably some grading, but not all.
Yes.
Right. Interesting point. She's going back to the point where maybe you had if someone typed in 5:6 and the computer thought the answer was 10:12, but the computer marked it wrong, she got to go back in and change the kid's grade in the computer.
And it's always a good idea to print out a couple copies just in case the computers don't work. You can get the kids, you know, a hard copy.
You get kids the choice of hard copy or computer?
No.
No.
If the computer works, they put it on the computer, but you'll have kids that have troubles and it'll take them 15 minutes to solve their problems and you're just wasting time, so just give them a hard copy. But we can't print out customized ones yet, so.
So that is your option again. You have to feel comfortable with moving to assessment in that way. By 2014, 2015, a state test, which will be a national test, will be here. You can't edit the test.
I'll tell you, what we did is we would, it's a little difficult because their numbers change, so you can't be specific, but what we would do is we would make up an extra piece of paper for the special ed kids. And for instance, on question number 1, you know, if it was something that they needed, like either a little hint or a picture, you can't limit like to 2 choices because you don't know if A is going to say, the answers aren't necessarily going to say A and B, so you can't say C and D, delete. But you can give them pictures like on a separate piece of paper, and you don't really have to do it for every question. Like we would do it probably for 10 of the questions maybe on the test. So those special ed kids would have an extra piece of paper next to their computer, and they would look at the extra information that we gave them on the piece of paper. That's how we did the special ed
Very nice.
modification. Because everybody's the questions are all the same, it's just the numbers that change and the order of multiple choice.
It's impossible to cheat because the question numbers change and the multiple choice. Your question number 1, your answer A, your answer B, even though it's the same question. So it's almost impossible. Others. I know it's overwhelming because there's so much information here. Once you get up and do it, I know these people at the beginning of the year last year were kicking and screaming. I must have got like 10 emails a day. By the second month, I got like 5 emails a day. You guys haven't bugged me in like 3 months now. Right? You must be bugging someone else. Marcia, you got questions? Things you want to bring up?
No, I think they probably more questions than us, they're probably tired.
Uh-huh.
End of the school year, a very long day, totally understandable. I think there's gonna be a lot of questions as we go through all of this, correct? Yes?
Yes.
And you need to what? You need to play with it, and you're gonna have questions as you're going, that's why we're doing this. This is just a kickoff, give you information, I know it's overwhelming at first, understandably, totally. All right, but I know we're in better shape than we were a year ago when we started all this. I think they're much better shape. Nobody? Pete? Somebody asked about, headphones, when the pilot teachers asked about headphones. Well, we were talking about that yesterday. You know, sometimes when the videos are playing and some of the stuff, the only concern I have with headphones is having been in the elementary school a lot over the years. There's always a lice issue with headphones and kids sharing headphones. And yeah, they're talking about maybe use antibacterial wipes. But in this day and age, so many of the kids own those little pods, those iPhones and so on, that they have one of those little 99-cent pairs of pods. They can bring them in and use them, and nobody's sharing headphones. You don't have to worry about having to clean the headphones. And if they don't have them, the school can buy extra 99-cent headphones and give them to the child. You know what I mean? To keep just for them to use for the year. It's not a lot of money. He's willing to do that. He said that. That's good. Okay? Right, does that make sense, ladies?
They did, when we had scheduled days in the lab to work on intervention lessons, they would just say, okay, I go back to my locker and get my headphones because all the videos are playing, but if everybody's watching a different lesson, they just kept it for themselves. So they did do that.
They
brought
did.
their own
Yeah,
in, listen, so you're not listening to everybody on both.
I think that's probably a better way to go than to get into that whole issue. You know, whether they're sharing headphones and whether they're clean. So you have to make sure that, you know what I mean? And then the whites, does that make sense?
And every time you go on a plane from now on, the steal the headphones they give you, make a collection.
Oh, wait, so they give you paper, they don't give you anymore. They're not free, everything costs money.
Oh, some places do.
I got an email that Frankie and Kenny has set up that folder that I promised in the library, so there is a folder that says district, that says district resources and the math, in the middle school math folder now, all right? All that's in it so far is the 3 brochures from back to school 9, 1 for 6, 1 for 7, 1 for 8, and you can modify with your own name and add whatever you want to it. So that's done, and we'll be adding other things to that as we go through. So that's a good thing too. What else did we have to refer back to? Anything else? Have we covered? So overwhelmed probably at this point. Nothing else? Yes? Could you speak a little louder?
There's a homework for this one that you could use that.
Right.
If you choose to use. Okay.
I don't ever hear that?
There's a homework, there's an intervention homework with each of the lessons. There's no summative assessment in the intervention lessons.
And you said, I'm sure, the same 100 intervention lessons that you use for all grade levels,
Right.
right? Same 100 intervention lessons you can pull.
So what's interesting to me, you're gonna have kids now in 7th grade, we might get assigned some same intervention lessons.
They got assigned the same one in the same year.
Right.
Because there's only 10 possible ones per unit, and there were some. So it's not going to be 25 different lessons, it's only 10 possible.
Right. I don't feel that remember it anyway.
No, they didn't remember it at the beginning of the year. They didn't.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I have this and I did this. Ready.
We didn't bring it. That's a good question. We would have to check a kid. The questions are, I don't know. Can a kid still access material right now?
We have, if you closed out your class tonight, you have to close out your class.
You could leave your class open, or you have to open.
You have to reshift before we get into next year, otherwise it'll be done. To release them, right?
There might be a reason to close it out. What's the reason to close it out?
Well, I closed it out, so then I would have the same grade book that all my material for next year.
But then to release them to be assigned to teachers.
Yes, yeah.
They can't be in more than one class.
All right, maybe more in one class. Probably not.
Eric, once they submit a homework assignment, can I go back to it?
Yes. Wait, let me check on that. When they submit a homework assignment, they can't go back and work on it.
They submit it.
Yes, and I can always go back as long as it's not past the due date.
The date you put it, due date is the date you put it. Can you modify that due date? You want to change it?
After the due date, they can still go in and do
Practice or next year.
They
Okay?
won't change their grade on them.
Guys, what about using the grade book in digits? How do you use that in conjunction with your regular school grade book?
I use the grade book in digits to see if they got above the 70% that I require, and that's because I give them the credit for the homework. That's pretty much how I use it.
Everybody hear that?
Look at it.
That's something I obviously have no experience with. How they use the grade book in digits versus the grade book you have to keep for your grade. One more time.
Well, I just put, if they got the required grade on the digits that I had required, then I give them credit for the homework. Otherwise, I really didn't keep the 70 that in my grade book.
How about for the test?
For the test, I typed them all up on exam.
For the test, I did it online and I would just that score, but go back and then have to modify their score if it was not acceptable, and then I would have to retype their scores into
You didn't try to export it as a.
No.
if they're not like that.
And We weren't able to change, like, we gave partial credit, it was very minimized what we could give, like, we couldn't just go in and put our own new score. We
Yes,
had
yes.
to.
You can edit grades, you can. I'll show you. You can edit their grades in that, but there really
But
is, it's just for them to see what they got.
Onto an Excel file, there's really no way to get Excel files back on the gradebook, so what's,
So the grade book doesn't take the Excel file?
You told us that.
You can
And you can't go from digits to powers.
You can't go directly.
Direct.
Digits
Look
to
at extra
Excel.
powers going around.
Excel and powers.
And you
It
know,
was
we
just
have.
easier to stick copy it out, have all the screens open.
They know, if you email me, I answer any single question. If I know the answer, and if I don't know the answer, I send it right to the vice president of beer stick. Because this is my baby. We spent 3 years doing this, and we're going to do it right. I fly around the whole country now talking about this, and I think it is the next way we will teach in the future, in the current time. I think all programs will move this way, and we're leading the way. And I know maybe not everybody's ready for it, not every teacher, not every student's ready for it, but 10 years from now, I think every program's like this, and we know there's a lot of bugs. So just email me the damn bugs and we'll get them fixed. Yes. It was, right. They complain nonstop about that, and it's getting done. They're adding a Zoom button where you'll be able to zoom in.
We talked about that this morning, we shared that.
And that's only because this district complained enough that the whole program is being changed because of you guys. And the word shouldn't be complained.
Any other questions? Right now, you all have registered, that means you can all play whenever you want, see whatever you think, okay? And we will be back here again on June 25th, and this year, everybody but Rob who's getting married, will be on his honeymoon, so we'll see you. Whatever it takes, Sally, we're not going. Okay, can I have attention for a minute? First of all, I want to thank Eric for coming here today. You're in trouble again, no doubt, Eric. I want to thank the presenters for joining us. Thank you. I want to thank our videographer for filming this. Speakers there.
On the ball true.
Wait, and I have to thank them again, because without them. And lastly, I want to thank you because I did not want to do in service at the end. Right, I know this to do that. You do great, you really have. This is the last we want to be doing it this way. I know you're tired. This is the whole long year. You should get a break before we're back together again. You'll be paid for that.